the debate and pressure that has been created by the Gen Zs into a need for a relook into how this government has been spending the taxes and revenue that they've been collecting from Kenyans, and in particular in regards to the running of various government institutions, is doing what we call increasing the pressure for the need of openness in the management of various state agencies, ministries, and departments in this country. Welcome to the Bold Analysis. My name is Frank. The Cabinet Secretary in charge of Transport, that is Honorable Kipchumba Murkomen, on the 8th day of July this year 2024, that is I think yesterday, did release a statement on the proposed review of the roads maintenance levy. You know, the Finance Bill 2024 had some section or proposal for a need to increase the road maintenance levy from 18 shillings to 25 shillings. I think that is an addition of about 7 shillings. This is something that has not been received well by a majority of Kenyans who have openly opposed this idea and discussion, saying that it is likely to impact on the cost of livelihoods in this country. Now, before we go further, I want us to have a look into that statement that Murkomen released. I'll just read it word by word, then we shall have a dissection analysis of it. I thank Kenyans across the country for turning up in large numbers to give their views on the maintenance of our roads. It is worth noting that there has been a considerable increase in the country's road network from 166,000 kilometers in 2016 to current 239,000 kilometers, which require regular maintenance from the 18 shillings provided by the road maintenance levy that has been in place for the last 8 years. As a country, we are grappling with a maintenance deficit of about 78 billion in this financial year alone, with the current trend is projected by the financial year 2028-29, this financing gap will rise to 315 billion. Most of these abandoned roads are under the low volume seal program, which have never been maintained in the last 10 years and are on the verge of being wiped away altogether. The roads maintenance levy review is therefore intended to fill this gap. From the views we have received, many Kenyans are worried that an increase in the levy will lead to an increase in the cost of living. That is just but part of Murkomen's statement that he did made. And I want us to have a look into this statement and have a look into this debate of increasing the road maintenance levy that is said to have various both negative and positive effects on the livelihoods of Kenyans. But before that, you know, some Kenyans have been arguing on social media of how this particular CS Murkomen has been living a life of opulence, and that they suspect that these are proceeds from the ministry that is being mandated with managing. And to our surprise yesterday, when Murkomen appeared on interview that was on Obina TV, Murkomen said something that left many mouth opened. He said that it is indeed true, yes, I own expensive watches that is costing around 900,000. I own shoes, I think the value of shoes he quoted to be around something 80,000, and the belt he said was around 50,000. Then I asked myself one thing. Really, what is the problem with some of the leaders who have been mandated with looking at the livelihoods of citizens in this country? It is like they don't feel touched. They are not in touch with the ground, with the grappling effects of the high cost of living that the common mwananchi is experiencing currently. So, if it indeed it would be true that they are in touch with the mwananchi, then such open opulence and show off would not be something that can be discussed that openly. Now, it is the same Murkomen who has called for a lifestyle audit on the performance of some of the leaders on all the leaders of this country. And I just want you to have a look at this snippet video where he has been saying that, you know what, I'm ready for an audit even into my transactions or my dealings or my work at the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure, and that it can really attest to the fact that I've been working and I can account for everything, for all my actions. And then following is also a snippet of a video from Senate proceedings by Senator Chirargei bashing Murkomen and other leaders for living contrary to what they are expected of. These are the videos.
Inafaa kila mwaka mawaziri wote na wizara yao wapelekwe kwa national discussion na kila mtu alete report card yake kila mwaka amefanyia nini Kenya kwa ile report card ya wizara inasimama. And I have said without fear of contradiction, as the Minister of Roads and Transport, we have done a fantastic job for the last 2 years. And I'm ready. Mimi nimeambia watu wa X, wa Y, wa Z. I am ready to account for every second that I go to my office at 6 in the morning and leave at 10 in the evening. I am ready to give an account of what this government has done for the last 2 years in my ministry. And it should be the tradition. Not
when I raise an issue of opulence of some of the cabinet ministers, I was blasted. I was accused of being jealous. I was accused of not knowing how to do deals. Mr. Speaker, I was accused of coming to take tea and mandazi in parliament instead of going to Tanzania and other countries to broker deals, Mr. Speaker, which is very unfortunate. And I was just calling out, don't eat too much and vomit before the feet of Kenyans. As a former ambassador would say, Mr. Speaker, even in my culture, where I come from, you don't eat and open your shirt. It is a culture, Mr. Speaker. And I called out, and you remember, I was being blasted left, right, and center, Mr. Speaker, and I warned them that if this trend of displaying opulence by members of parliament and some cabinet ministers without humility, and I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, for the last 2 weekends, at least the quality of hair has improved. Because when choppers were crisscrossing, it was also affecting our agenda of climate change, Mr. Speaker, where people would fly in, land, reorganize the program of a funeral or a church service, speak, insult other elected leaders, Mr. Speaker, call them dimwits, call them fools, the way I was being called in Nandi last year, give out the money that God knows where they got it from, millions of shillings, and they fly away from the chopper, disrupting, Mr. Speaker, a social function for the next 1 hour or 30 minutes, Mr. Speaker, until they settle, Mr. Speaker. So the issue of corruption, and I think, Mr. Speaker, as a proposal to the President and EACC, Mr. Speaker, we must start doing lifestyle audits to all of us, state officers and all governors. Any person who is serving in a public office, we must do lifestyle audit. We must know, so that the reason Kenyans were on the streets, the reason Gen Z were calling us out, is because they are wondering, how can you contribute 20 million shillings in an Arambe, and yet they don't have even 100 shillings. They were wondering, minister would be an Arambe counting millions of shillings, and the roads are not there, Mr. Speaker. And the water is not there, Mr. Speaker. So they are wondering, we are telling them the economy is bad, but we preside an Arambe worth millions of shillings, Mr. Speaker. It is not bad to do an Arambe. It is not bad to help people, but we must do their and I'm telling you, I know some people even who had bought shirts for funerals, dark suits, because their only thing was just when they hear social function, Senator Sifuna, they appear. But they have never visited the bad roads that are in our counties or look even at the water, Mr. Speaker. But
you know, before we get into that Murkomen statement, there is something that I tend to think that, you know, Kenya's economic mess is politically man-made. Let us not pretend that this economic mess that we are in current now, it is something that we inherited from some people or that it is there and that we require additional measures in order to deal with it. When in real sense, this thing seems to be politically man-made. Now, let's talk about the statement that Murkomen did release. There is no deficit in the amounts collected at 18 shillings per litre of fuel that we fuel. So, if there is no deficit, then it doesn't beat logic to say that you need an additional 7 shillings to raise it to 25 in order for us to maintain our roads. We'll share that within this video. Because, our problem always is, or has always been, with the cartels in the road construction industry or sector that have been swallowing up contracts. They in fact inflate costs of constructing roads per kilometer, and these leaders who are in office, like the cabinet secretary in charge of transport, he has to tell us, because he's part of these leaders. There are reports that have been there that, for you to win a road construction tender, then you have to agree with the politician who will make it possible for you to win that tender, that if, for example, per kilometer you'd be charging 3 million, that is just an example, then 1 million belongs to that politician in question who connected you. So, that means that all this need for increasing these amounts is just to cater for the stomachs of some few people. And you also know that the quality of roads, if we construct proper quality roads, then it will mean that also the cost for maintenance will go down. It doesn't beat logic to raise these levies, then later come and do or construct poor quality roads that will necessitate the need for regular maintenance each and every now and then. Because we've seen that we have that capacity in Kenya, be it outsourced or insourced, to construct modern standard roads that do not need every now and then maintenance. At one point, the cabinet secretary in charge of transport and infrastructure, Murkomen, and even the chairperson of the finance committee in the National Assembly, that is the Molo MP Kuria Kimani, said that the increase in the number of vehicles in Kenya had increased, therefore piling more pressure on our roads. So that was their defense for the proposal to increase the road maintenance levy. So there is something that is really baffling at their kind of statistical reasoning, because in Kenya alone, in the last 11 years, there was a total data of 1.27 registered vehicles, compared to now when we have about 2.19 new registered vehicles. Those are just registered vehicles. And if at all these are registered vehicles, then there are other unregistered vehicles that equally consume fuel. And not just the debate on vehicles alone, because fuel at the pump, even for people who use generators, they buy this fuel at the pump. For people who depend on fuel for other uses, maybe for industrial production, they depend on this fuel from the pump. Therefore, especially if they're not doing it in large scale, therefore, knowingly or unknowingly, they pay for this road maintenance levy and also pay for the road maintenance levy for whatever vehicle they'll be using to transport this fuel to their sites of work. So, such are the baffling numbers in the consumption of this road maintenance levy. And somebody was sharing something which I wish to share with you. But Kenyans, we have been taken fools for a while, because let's assume that we have 1 million vehicles on our roads today, and each vehicle of the 1 million consumes 1 liter. So if you take 1 million times 1 liter of fuel, then it means that we'll have about 1 million liters that are being consumed on a single day alone. So, for every single vehicle, in a liter that every single vehicle is assumed to be taking in a day, the government takes 18 shillings for road maintenance levy. So, it would mean that per day, we'll be having those 1 million liters times 18 shillings. That will be coupling to around 18 million shillings just in a day. So in a day, if Kenya has a minimum number of vehicles consuming 1 liter, we get 18 million. What is the value that we get in a single year? So if you take 18 million, you multiply it by the rest of the about 360 or 366 or days, that would be roughly about 6.5 billion in a year. 6.5 billion alone in a year. This money isn't taxable. This road maintenance levy is not taxable, it is not a loan, and there are no other uses, and this is just a day. Then, there are vehicles that even consume more than even 50 liters per day. And for real, this Kenya seems to be a Kenya for the what were tumbocrats. People who only look after their stomachs. So, I feel that CS Murkomen is not candid. The chair of the Finance Planning Committee is not candid. The Ministry of Treasury is not candid. The President is not candid on this road maintenance levy. And even to add on that, our roads do not need only this road maintenance levy because we fund the government otherwise. Leave alone that letter that was written by Murkomen. At some point, he said that in the last 10 years, we've not had a significant maintenance of some of these roads. And if it is true that we've not had a significant maintenance, then they are the people in government right now. They should be able to categorically tell us where this money has been going and what has been its usage. And if at all, there are people in previous governments that ate this money knowingly, then they need to be prosecuted. There, I think we shall be walking the talk of candidness with Kenyans. So, take for instance today, a contractor constructing 100 kilometers of road, and just bearing in mind the kind of time that our Kenyan contractors take constructing roads because of maybe bureaucracies in terms of payment or on their side, laziness on their side. We've never understood them. Then by the time that they'll be through with the construction of the first 90 kilometers, then it would mean that the first 10 kilometers that they constructed would already be requiring maintenance because of the time frame that they take in constructing these roads. So, again, let's have an open statistical discussion on the data of our roads status. That is the roads that we've constructed together with other additional facilities such as bridges, footbridges, among many other road additional facilities. Let's have an open statistical audit on them. Give us data from your ministry. This one you can request the audit of the Auditor General to audit this. It doesn't need a special task force on this, such that that data would be shared with Kenyans on how we've awarded tenders on maintenance or even construction for a time frame of, for example, the last 10 years, and how these tenders were awarded and what was the actual cost of construction of these roads, in bearing in mind with the exchange rates as at that time. Let's not have inflations in the figures or cooking of the figures and then blaming that on the inflation or weakening of the shilling. So that is the kind of the work that we should work on the roads. Also recently, the Auditor General's office released a report, which is a public report available on the Office of the Auditor General's website, on the road maintenance levy fund for the financial year ended 30th June 2023. That is mostly on the KERA. So that report reveals that despite the funds for the maintenance of the roads being released from the exchequer, there are numerous projects that are yet to be completed long even after expiry of the project duration. Because when the government awards tender for the maintenance or construction of a particular road, then part of the contract, I think that is a standard practice in any business that a contract is awarded. You need to state in writing that how long will be your contract. If it is for a period of 5 years, then if within 5 years you've not been paid, then you can also sue. But you find that exchequer released money for the payment and those projects have not been completed. And even to shock you, in some of the projects, the contractors were missing on site despite payments having been released without completion certificates, because they are required to award the completion, to be awarded the completion certificates by the government. And also, on some roads, according to that report by the Auditor General, there was, or there is actually, absence of requisite publicity signs. Those are signs like the speed limits that shouldn't be exceeded and etc, etc. And even on some roads, there are potholes on completed projects and repairs not meeting recommended standards. So, as Murkomen's office or ministry, together with the treasury, together with the office of the president, seeks more funds on the road maintenance levy, then it would only make logic if we can be able to account for the issues in that report that was released by the Auditor General. If we can be able to account for that, then we would say that yes, we've accounted for that and down, and thus Kenyans now can see the actual deficit or problem that we are in, and now they'd also reason with you that it is right to increase this maintenance levy. So there's also been a question that has been asked, that why is it that it is only in this government that has been realizing that everything is growing and thus there are gaps to fill. Almost everything that they've been proposing to increase, it is them who are realizing that everything is growing and thus there is a gap to be filled. And just for example, the bad state of the construction of our roads in this country, this is something that Murkomen needs to take seriously and not lightly. Sometimes, just within these years, I think some few months ago, if it is so long, then it's 1 month back, the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua was attending some function in around Kasarani, and he promised the people at that meeting that, for years, the Kangundo Highway project, road project, has stalled, and we think that the contractor is trying to play some games, and therefore we are going to have a sit down with him and tell him that, you are going to face the consequences of not completing this road on time. But for a long time indeed, this is a road that was constructed, done for a few kilometers and then left. But then the public understanding is that this is a contract that was awarded, not even in this government of Ruto, but by the previous government, and the contractor, the lead contractor in that road, we know him. He's been a politician in this country, was a governor at some particular point, and is now currently not a governor. But he was awarded that contract and tender for doing that road. And up to now, that road has not been done. Even demolitions were done on that road. People later came back and reclaimed the land in which they were demolished for. And they've now constructed those illegal structures on the roads.